Hey there, welcome to this step-by-step guide on setting up remote desktop services with Windows Server 2022. Whether you are managing a small business or setting up a lab environment, this video is going to walk you through everything you need to know to build a secure and scalable RDS environment that will support multiple users. And don't worry, we will make it fun and easy to follow, so let's get started. Alright, first things first, let's make sure we've got everything in place before diving into the technical stuff. You'll need a few things ready. A domain controller, a basic group policy knowledge, 2 virtual machines, RDS1 and RD Gateway in this example, static IP address for each machine, a file server for FSLogix storage, a public domain name, and last but not least, port forwarding for ports 80, 443. If any of this sounds unfamiliar, we've got other videos that will break it down for you, links in the description below. Now, let's dive into installing and configuring our Active Directory Certificate Services, or ADCS for short. It's all about securing your remote desktop environment. Let's start by opening Server Manager and add roles and features. Choose Active Directory Certificate Services and follow the wizard. Choose Configure Active Directory Certificate Services on the destination server. Select Certificate Authority, configure it as an Enterprise CA, configure it as a root CA, create a new private key. I like to adjust this to my domain name, CA, set it to 5 years. That's it. Easy, right? Next, we will continue by configuring our group policies for our certificate authority. Let's open Group Policy Management. In Group Policy Management, edit the default domain policy. Navigate to Computer, Configuration Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, and Public Key Policy. You can enable the Certificate Services Client auto-enrollment and select Renew Expired Certificate Date and update certificates that use certificate templates. Repeat the process also under User Configuration, so you go to User Configuration, Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Public Key Policies, and Certificate Services Client auto-enrollment. Now that we have locked the gates with certificates, it's time to install remote desktop services. Ready? Let's start by adding our servers to Server Manager. Let's click on All Servers, Add Servers. Easiest way is to click on Find Now and select your RD Gateway and RDS1. Add them and press OK. For installing our RDS roles, open Server Manager again. Click on Add Roles and Features. Select Remote Desktop Services Installation. Select Standard Deployment. In this case, we want a session-based desktop deployment. You will specify our remote desktop connection broker, which will be our RD Gateway virtual machine. we want to install the web access role to the same machine. And our RDS session host server will be RDS1. Once you hit install, sit back, grab a coffee, and let the Windows server do its thing. Next up, secure your remote desktop traffic with certificates. Let's make sure your users get that little lock symbol on their browsers when they connect. Open Server Manager, go to All Servers, right-click on your remote desktop gateway and select Remote Desktop Connection. Download Certify the Web. And request a certificate for your public DNS name. Now let's export the certificate and import it in Server Manager. In your remote desktop service overview, go to Deployment Overview, Tasks, and Edit Deployment Properties. Under Certificates, you can assign it to Remote Desktop Web Access, select an existing certificate, press OK and apply. To install Remote Desktop Gateway, just click on the icon, select our Remote Desktop Gateway, enter the same name you use for your public domain, configure certificate, and select the same certificate. With that, your remote desktop service is now secure, all done without breaking a sweat. To configure remote desktop licensing, press RDS licensing, select your gateway server, press next, and press add. To configure, go to Deployment Properties, go to Licensing, and select Per User Licensing. Alright, let's talk about FSLogix. This nifty tool helps manage your user profiles like a pro, and the best part, it makes login times lightning fast. First, create shared folders for your profiles and your containers. Here is a recommended permission configuration for the folder. Don't forget to share. Download the latest version of FSLogix from the Microsoft website. and install FSLogix on each remote desktop session host. Now let's dive into the group policy settings. This part is crucial for syncing profiles across sessions, especially for Office 365 users, but don't worry, it's simpler than it sounds. Locate two files, FSLogix ADMX and FSLogix ADML file, which are in the zip file you just downloaded. And copy them to the location based on whether you're using a local or central store certificate configuration. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we have a link in the description that will explain what each will do. Now, let's dive into the group policy settings. This part is crucial for syncing profiles across sessions, especially for Office 365 users, but don't worry, it's simpler than it sounds. Let's start by opening our group policy management. To create a new group policy, right-click Group Policy and select New and give it the proper name. I've already prepared the policy. And don't worry, I've documented all policies that I have enabled right here. So to configure it, go to Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, and select FSLogix. You can enable all the configuration settings that are available here. After you are done configuring your group policy, don't forget to assign it to the proper OU. In this case, our remote desktop service host will be located under our RDS OU, and I will link our FSLogix policy right here. What's better than logging in once and getting access to everything? Yep, single sign-on, or SSO for short. Here's how to set it up. Create a group policy, go to Group Policy Management, create a group policy called Computer Policy Enable RDP Single Sign-On. Under Administrative Policies, under Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Template, System, and Credential Delegation. Navigate to Allow Delegate Default Credentials, set to Enabled, and enter this command, this string right here. You can use a wildcard to include the entire domain. create two more policies, one called Enable RD Gateway SSO to use locally logged on credentials, and Enable RDP Web Feed to give user access to apps via the browser. With SSO in place, your users can jump straight into their session without typing in their password multiple times. Say goodbye to login fatigue. Also, don't forget to link your policies to the correct UU. Alright, now that we've got everything in place, it's time to bring it all together by creating a desktop collection with our remote desktop session host. Let's dive right in. Go to Server Manager and select your remote desktop services. Select Create Session Collections and follow the wizard. In our example, let's call it Remote Desktop Sessions. Add your RDS1 virtual machine as a session host. For the user groups, select the default domain users groups, but remember you can restrict access further by creating custom groups if you only want certain users to connect. This flexibility lets you control who gets access to the remote desktop environment, perfect for managing user permissions. When you get to the Specify User Profile disks, make sure not to enable this. Since we're using FSLogix for profile management, we don't need to enable user profile disks here. FSLogix has got us covered. Now users in the selected group will have access to remote desktop through the collection you just created. With that, you've got everything set up for a smooth and efficient remote desktop environment. Now that everything is set up, it is time to show you how easy it is for users to connect to their remote desktop sessions using single sign-on and remote app web feed. Let's check it out. First, let's see how our web feed populates remote apps and desktop sessions automatically. Open the Start menu and you will see the remote desktop session has been automatically populated under Work Resources or Remote App Desktop Connections. Thanks to the remote web feed, users don't have to manually configure anything. As soon as they log on into their domain account, the remote desktop session and any published apps appear right here in the Start menu. Click on the remote desktop session to launch it. You'll notice that single sign-on kicks in and there's no need to enter credentials again. Single sign-on automatically logs you in. And there you have it, no extra logins needed. With single sign-on enabled, you're taken straight into your desktop session, and this is super convenient for users, especially in environments where logging in multiple times can be a hassle. Here we are in our fully functional remote desktop session, and thanks to FSLogix, everything loads quickly and your profiles are synced across sessions. That's it. From the client side, your user gets a seamless experience, remote desktops and apps automatically available in the Start menu, and no need to re-enter credentials, all thanks to single sign-on. Be sure to check out the links in the description for additional resources, and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell for more tech tutorials. Until next time, happy remote desktoping!